The Ministry of Truth is no more. That's right, the Biden administration's disinformation board, or whatever they're calling it, has been paused indefinitely. And it seems as though sweet, sweet Nina Jankowicz, woke Mary Poppins, is resigning. This scoop coming from the Washington Post. Listen to this headline. How the Biden administration let right-wing attacks derail its disinformation efforts. The quote-unquote pause of the Department of Homeland Security's newly created board comes after its head, Nina Jankowicz, was the victim of coordinated online attacks as the administration struggled to respond. The byline, Taylor Lorenz, who is an expert on coordinating online attacks. It's her whole job. So apparently the Biden administration has just knuckled under to right-wing attacks. And in the story, it's like, this was mentioned on Fox News a lot. Oh, no. How dare we? How dare we? It's just a powerful government entity supposedly and ostensibly designed to root out misinformation and disinformation, led by an apparently unvetted woman who has been a promiscuous spreader of mis and disinformation herself. And strangely, our news organization thought that was newsworthy. And Taylor Lorenz, an online bully, posing as a journalist at the Washington Post, seems to think that the real victim in all of this is, well, cut 11.
Information laundering is really quite ferocious. It's when a huckster takes some lies and makes them sound precocious by saying them in Congress or a mainstream outlet. So disinformation's origins are slightly less atrocious. It's how you hide a little lie. It's how you hide a little lie. It's how you hide a little lie. When Rudy Giuliani shared bad intel from Ukraine, or when TikTok influencers say COVID can cause pain, they're laundering disinfo, and we really should take note and not support their lies with our wallet, voice, or vote. Oh!
There's your victim in all of this.
The story you're about to see is true. The names have been changed to protect the innocent.
Tell me what to do. What do I talk? To be famous and powerful, while I'm still stuck here singing Christmas songs for all of you. What does it take?
Now, the good news is that almost all the big tech platforms now acknowledge some responsibility for content on their platforms, and they're investing in large teams of people to monitor it. Given the sheer volume of content, this strategy can feel like a game of whack-a-mole. Still, talking to people at these companies, I believe they are sincere in trying to limit content that engages in hate speech, encourages violence, or poses a threat to public safety. They genuinely are concerned about it. They want to do something about it. But while content moderation can limit the distribution of clearly dangerous content, it doesn't go far enough.
Misleading information that uses gendered tropes. So it might be, for instance, this is a big one that we tracked in the report, Kamala Harris slept her way to the top. Or it might be that Jacinda Ardern, another one that we found, is actually a man. So we might see racist tropes about, name it, I mean, Ilhan Omar is a favorite for this sort of racist sexual rhetoric that's compounded, the idea that she married her brother to immigrate to the United States, for instance. But then we see racialized narratives, things like Kamala ain't black, hashtag Kamala ain't black is one that we tracked. Things that are saying that she's not black enough, she's not South Asian enough to claim that heritage. Same thing goes against AOC. So rather than write the word bitch, they will use an exclamation point instead of an I. or they will use visual memes to avoid textual detection. So one of the things that I get pretty frequently as a woman in my 30s without children is I get sent pictures of empty egg cartons, which are meant to remind me that my fertility is waning. That those same narratives about Kamala Harris, about other candidates, about women in general in the West were echoed in domestic Russian disinformation.
The government silence voices that are politically inconvenient and that it disagrees with.
As a matter of course, in our domestic politics, of course not.
So why is the Biden administration creating a board to do that?
I believe this is based on the awareness that misinformation and disinformation is used as a weapon against the
So was the Hunter Biden laptop misinformation? The Hunter Biden laptop.
I'm not familiar with all of the details of those stories. What I know is that Russia, notably, and other players too.
Except it wasn't Russia. It's an accurate laptop. Now the New York Times has acknowledged that after the election, and yet the head of this disinformation board happily pushed out that it was disinformation. That is a code word for things that are politically inconvenient.
Comey and McCabe told us the dossier was real. Democrats told us in the summer of 2020 that rioters and looters were peaceful protesters, and 51 former government officials in the fall of 2020, in the run-up to our most important election, 51 former government intelligence officials, including 6 CIA directors, told us the Hunter Biden story wasn't true. Now, we know that's baloney because 6 weeks ago, the Washington Post said, oh, it is true. Think about COVID, as the whip was talking about. Joe Biden told us, think all the misinformation we got from the government. Joe Biden said he had a plan. No, that didn't work out. Joe Biden said that he would never impose a mandate. Well, he did, so much so that the Supreme Court had to tell him it was unconstitutional. Dr. Fauci said it didn't come from a lab. Sure looks like it did. Dr. Fauci says it wasn't gain-of-function research. Sure looks like it was. Dr. Fauci said our money wasn't used, American tax dollars wasn't used in the Wuhan Institute of Virology lab. Yes, it was. The head of the CDC said the vaccinated couldn't get it. The head of the CDC said the vaccinated couldn't transmit it. And of course, they've been all over the place. They said no mask, one mask, two masks, one mask, no mask, back to one mask. Now we're finally back to normal. They've been all over the place there. And of course, they said that natural immunity wasn't really a thing, even though it's been a thing ever since we've known about viruses for hundreds of years. So just this week, I think it was the Journal did a long piece on the origins of the dossier. And the conclusion was basically it was completely made up. Totally made up, out of thin air, just made the whole thing up. I wonder what Nina Jankowicz would have said back when the dossier came out. Would she have said it was disinformation? We now know it was completely made up. What would she say about that? And on we could go. So this thing is ridiculous. Everyone instinctively knows it except the lefties in the Biden administration who are now running our government. Let's hope we end this. Let's hope that Secretary Mayorkas has a little common sense and says this was a dumb idea and that they disband this disinformation governance board.
at the department?
Senator, we don't discuss our internal hiring processes, but I am the Secretary of Homeland Security, and ultimately I am responsible.
When the department picked her, did it know that she had said that Mr. Hunter Biden's laptop is Russian disinformation?
Senator, let me repeat myself and add one other fact. I was not aware of that. We do not discuss the internal hiring process. Ultimately, as the Secretary, I'm responsible for the decisions of the Department of Homeland Security.
When the department picked Ms. Jankowicz, did it know that she had vouched for the veracity of the Steele dossier?
Senator, let me repeat myself and add an additional fact. One, we do not discuss internal hiring processes. Two, I was not aware of that fact. Three, as the Secretary of Homeland Security, I am responsible for the decisions of the department. And four, it is my understanding that Ms. Jankowicz is a subject matter expert in the field in which she will be working on behalf of the
Tell me what to do. What do I have to be famous?
Just stand don't talk.
This is what the beginning of this week looked like on news that Elon Musk had successfully acquired Twitter.
Big man in a suit of armor. Take that off. What are you?
Genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist.
Labs all set up, boss.
Oh, actually, he's the boss. I just pay for everything and design everything. Make everyone look cooler.
Just stick to the official statement as soon as the law be behind you.
And now Mr. Stark has prepared a statement. He will not be taking any questions.
I bought Twitter.
It looks like Twitter's gone. They accepted the money and stopped. Bringing you what's ignored, sensationalized, unbalanced, misleading, or just plain false, here's your media malfeasance for the final week of April. News of the Twitter takeover was plenty covered by legacy media, but was it covered fairly? Newsweek headlines with how to delete Twitter. And Brian Stelter makes the strangest analogy ever.
If you get invited to something where there are no rules, where there is total freedom for everybody, do you actually want to go to that party?
Was BS ever invited to a party? Party and rules seems like an oxymoron. CNN's deranged cousin MSNBC offers this take.
If you own all of Twitter or Facebook or what have you, you don't have to explain yourself. You don't even have to be transparent. You could secretly ban one party's candidate or all of its candidates, all of its nominees, or you could just secretly turn down the reach of their stuff and turn up the reach of something else, and the rest of us might not even find out about it till after the election.
You mean like what Twitter controllers have been doing to your opposition and even censoring Hunter Biden's laptop before the 2020 election? Here's what Laura from Twitter had to say. A Musk-owned Twitter is one of the greatest threats to the 2022 and 2024 elections. We are effed if this happens. Oh, so they were influencing elections. While critics paint him as an authoritarian supervillain, aren't authoritarians those who apply more control, not less? This genius poses this question.
There is a problem with this idea of free speech, and that is, where is the limit?
It's called free speech. Any limit would be extremely limited. Musk spells out how he wants it applied, congruent with our laws. The First Amendment fundamentally protects speech that is unpopular, offensive, or even abhorrent. Here's the Washington Post. Elon Musk boosts criticism of Twitter execs, prompting online attacks. This is the same news outlet that just ran with an article doxing a private citizen with an anonymous account. And here's the online attack she got. An actual death threat. So it was WAPO itself that boosted criticism of libs of TikTok, prompting online attacks. How do these people have this little self-awareness? They say they're for fairness. You know, that careful balance of 98.7% for one side. And then when called out for their 2 a.m. immediate request for comment, WAPO edits their piece without so much as an editor's note. As I've said before, so much for retractions in today's unethical news delivery. FCC Commissioner Brennan Carr rejected calls for the FCC to step in and block Elon Musk from buying Twitter, saying it's a frivolous request and points out the irony.
You go back to the New York Times, the editor there in the 1950s said that diversity of opinion is the lifeblood of our democracy. The moment that we insist that everyone think the same way we do, our democratic way of life is in danger. And now there's been such a fast pivot when it comes to that, and people want to shut down any divergent view. And it's not just this idea that they don't want to hear divergent views. They don't want those views to exist. They don't want people to be able to exchange political information.
So now all of a sudden, the Biden administration cares about big tech influence.
Our concerns are not new. We've long talked about, and the president has long talked about his concerns about the power of social media platforms, including Twitter and others, to spread misinformation, disinformation, the need for these platforms to be held accountable.
Interesting timing. Also interesting timing, DHS announces the creation of a disinformation governance board, announced just 2 days after Musk secured the Twitter deal. Secretary Mayorkas testified it's to combat misinformation just ahead of the midterms.
We created the Centers for Prevention Programs and Partnership, we term it CP3, to equip and resource local communities with information and funds so that they can tackle the radicalization to violence.
This is the same man that spread actual disinfo that Border Patrol agents were whipping Haitians at the border. Let's compare Disinformation Governance Board to Orwell's Ministry of Truth in 1984. It describes constant surveillance, newspeak, designed to shrink the potential for free thought, a propaganda machine, in order to remain in power. The government is trying to get involved in controlling free speech, a direct violation of the Constitution. And here's who they want to lead it.
They're laundering disinfo and we really should take note and not support their lies with our wallet, voice or vote. Oh!
So this is the point of the show. We're going to say we're kidding or making all of this up. It's not really happening in the country you were born in, but it is happening. That's now a law enforcement official.
This same woman says she was just quoting the presidential debate when referring to Hunter Biden's laptop as Russian disinfo when it wasn't. But wait, here's another tweet where she says it was a fairy tale laptop repair. Processes of education, the remedy to be applied is more speech, not enforced silence. For KLIM.News, I'm Christy Lee.
It's where the huckster takes some lies and makes them sound precocious by saying them in Congress or a mainstream outlet. So disinformation's origins are slightly less atrocious. It's how you hide a little lie. It's how you hide a little lie. It's how you hide a little lie when Rudy Giuliani shared bad intel from Ukraine, or when TikTok influencers say COVID can cause pain. They're laundering disinfo and we really should take note and not support their lies with our wallet, voice or vote.
I'm talking about the deep state and things like that, which is a thread among conspiracy communities here in the United States, that there is this secret cabal here in Washington working to undermine the American people. It couldn't be farther from the truth as someone who works with and around public servants every day.
Tell me what to do. Who do I fuck to be famous and powerful? While I'm still stuck here singing Christmas songs for all of you. What does it take?
Ellie and Alfred, wife to Reginald. Reg. Thank you, Albert. Mary Elizabeth Cattermole. Yes. A wand was taken from you upon your arrival at the ministry today, Mrs. Cattermole. Is this that wand? Would you please tell the court from which witch or wizard you took this wand? I didn't take it.
Tell them, Rich. Tell them what I am. Rich, tell them what I am.
What on earth are you doing, Albert?
You're lying, Dolores. Everyone mustn't tell lies.
Stupid! Tell me what to do. Who do I fuck to be famous and powerful? While I'm still stuck here singing Christmas songs for all of you.